Hi there, it's Nicole here for Waffle Flower Crafts, and today I am sharing this card made with the brand new Stay Cool stamp set and coordinating dies. This is one of my favorites from the summer 2017 release. It is so super cute with little bears that can be wearing shades and peeking out of the waves, snorkeling, the little birdie in the inner tube, or the adorable little bear that's laying on the beach towel. You can create a whole fun little beachy scene with him, which I will be doing later on. To start, I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock here that I have die cut with the largest pinking layers die from Waffle Flower Crafts. And this is because it die cuts the little holes. It doesn't actually die cut the rectangle, it'll die cut the holes. And I did this because I want to add a stitching border all the way around. I also want to keep my ink concentrated to the center of this panel. This is some squeezed lemonade distress ink applied to the top portion. You can see it's pretty messy, and to get around the kind of funky look around the edges, since I'm not going all the way to the edge of the panel, I really think the distress sprayer, blotting that out, it kind of mutes that a little bit. I'm adding tumbled glass and salty ocean distress inks to the bottom of this panel as well for the water portion. And then I'm going to flip it around the right way, and you can see the ink is still really wet. That's okay. I'm going to spritz it with water from the distress sprayer, blot it dry really good. I am really going to go and make sure all that water is dry. I even added a little extra water. I'm going to blot that dry. If any ink gets to the edge of the panel, this is the time where you want to take a clean part of your paper towel and buff it off. I'll show that here in a minute. After I've applied my sun rays to the sky with some Wild Honey Distress ink through this Tim Holtz Rays stencil. This is one of my favorite stencils. I use it a lot. It is fantastic. So I applied the Wild Honey, I buffed it out a little with squeezed lemonade, and then you can see I accidentally got clear to the edge on the right side. So what I did was spritz it with water because I wanted to stress that. And I'm going to blot it dry, and that's going to give some nice distressing to those sun rays. Then I'm going to take the clean corner of my paper towel, I did wet it just a little bit, and I'm going to buff the edges anywhere where the ink may have got clear to the edge, and it's going to pick it up pretty good. So there is my distressed background. I've got my little images that I laid out to make sure everything was going to fit, and I'm going to start by stamping those. I am using the little partial bear that's going to be peeking out of the waves, the snorkel mask, a fish, and the bird in the float. Now the fish I'm going to need multiples of because I am going to be creating a whole little scene of them jumping out of the water around the rest of my scene with those. Originally I thought I would stamp the wave and then attach it to the card, and that just really wasn't working. So instead I'm going to do more of an inlay style where I'm using the die and not the stamp. Although I do think it might have been cute to stamp the waves, but I didn't do it for this card. I'm just going to keep those little die cut pieces because I'm going to do an inlay. And I'm going to do a trio of waves here down in the quote unquote water area of this scene, using a little post-it tape to line those up or hold it in place while I run it through my big shot. Want to make sure it's exactly where I want it to go. I did flip it so that all the waves aren't going exactly the same way. I'll die cut that third one, and then I can really set aside this panel while I work on doing a little coloring. I did stamp all of my images on some Bristol Smooth cardstock using the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be using some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers for coloring. I am not adding in any water here. You could if you wanted to. I'm actually just using the markers to do my blending. I like to lay down the dark color first and then usually blend out with the lighter. For the goggles I didn't, or the little snorkel mask. I did the glass part of that with a couple shades of blue, and then I went ahead and skipped over to the fish. I used two colors, the light brown and yellow for the fish, and then I went back with the light brown and added some detail. So in the finished card especially, you're going to notice that there are some little marks in the fish, kind of make it look like gills. And that is how I achieve that. Right here, I'm just kind of going in with the tip of my brush and gently touching it to the paper. Go ahead and color a few more of these. Very quick coloring. Everything for this card, the coloring was super quick. I do like that with the zigs. I feel like they're very forgiving in that way, and the coloring tends to go really fast because you don't have to go back like you often have to with other kinds of shading. It's really simple. I did start to color in the other float. I had to restamp that, and that's because I colored in the bird with yellows, kind of like you would color a chick, and I realized I wanted that color combination for the fish, so I restamped the image, colored it back in, and then I added some blues for the bird, and then a red or kind of orangey color it ends up being. I like scarlet red and yellow blended together for a nice orange. And this is going to add pops of color. There are quite a few yellows, obviously, and blues in the card, but then the browns and the yellow browns of the fish and bear. So I tried to add color where I could, where the float and the bird are both really colorful, as well as the greenery, and then, of course, the little snorkel mask here, also in shades of blue. And that's where I just went in with my darker blue and colored in the rest of that. I'm going to put my background panel in my MISTI and position my greeting from the Stay Cool stamp set, and it's aptly called Stay Cool. And I'm going to stamp it with the MISTI because I'm pretty sure with that nice solid bold greeting, it's going to need to be stamped more than once. And this is going to ensure that it's stamped exactly on top of itself using the MISTI to do that. I'm going to take a white gel pen and add detail to the goggles, some little white dots to the cheeks, to the eyes on the fish. I did end up doing that to all 5 fish, not really thinking about the fact that one of them is going to be tucked underneath, and so you aren't really going to see that eye, but that's okay. And next, I'm really ready to start putting the whole thing together. And a great way to do this, I'm going to go ahead and attach my fish. I'm going to attach anything that kind of goes on the front, and then I'll show you how I attach those waves really easily. So I've got my fish tucked in place, I've got my bear, I'm going to do the float, at least the bottom edge of it. I can go back and add some adhesive for the top in a little bit. And then I'm going to flip my whole panel over, and I'm going to cover the back of this with foam adhesive. This is one of my go-to techniques for adding inlays to a panel like this, because it's going to put adhesive all over the back. So it's not only going to make this a raised panel, but it will add that adhesive right behind any of those die cut areas, and you can simply inlay those waves back in place. I kind of got off a little bit here. So I really covered it good with foam adhesive, making sure you don't go clear to the edge. You want to leave that stitching area open because I am going to be adding some hand stitching there in a little bit. Then I'm simply going to kind of tuck my fish. Before I press that foam adhesive down too good, I'm going to tuck my fish in place. And then anywhere that needs a little extra adhesive, I did add it. However, I kind of forgot that the zigs, I know that they do, but they react with water, and glue does have liquid to it. And so it did make my zig ink run in a couple of places, which I covered up with some Nouveau Crystal drops, but I added that glue right there. And then as I went to press my wave in place, some of that ink from the float kind of squished out, which kind of irritated me, but I hadn't really been thinking about it or thinking it through too well. So you can see I smudged a little ink there. There's a little bit of orange in the ocean and a little bit of yellow over there by the one fish on the left. And I'm simply going to cover those up with the Nouveau Crystal drops. Here comes the finishing details with a little glossy accents over the face mask of the snorkel mask. And then Nouveau Crystal Drops in Caribbean Ocean and Morning Dew are going to give that great bubble-like feel to the design. I'm going to just put those in varying sizes throughout the design of my card. And I did make sure to kind of try to cover up any of those little ink oopsies throughout the design. Morning Dew is my favorite, probably. I bet I've used it the most. I love it as an alternative to glossy accents, but it does have a slight, I don't want to say tint to it, but it's not going to be as crystal clear as glossy accents. That's why I used glossy accents for the mask. Now, once all of this is dry, this is when I would do the stitching, or do it before you add any of those liquid embellishments. Go ahead and run your thread all the way around, and I go up and down every other one and then go back the other way to fill that all in instead of doing a traditional back stitch. I did this with the Nouveau Drops wet, and I had to be super careful, but I would really suggest either doing it before or letting this sit and dry and coming back and doing it later. Do keep in mind that Nouveau Crystal Drops do need about 24 hours to completely air dry. They will be dry to the touch within an hour or so, but they need 24 hours to be really hard. Thanks for joining me today for this Waffle Flower card featuring the new Stay Cool stamps and dies. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more Waffle Flower videos you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.